I've been on teams or played with players where they catch the ball, they have an amazing scoring opportunity to the weak side. They don't even look. They don't look to shoot. They don't look to pass. They don't look to drive.
As an Asian American, like how electric Madison Square Garden became whenever you stepped on the floor.
Within a month, you're gonna be the starter, and you're gonna like rise to stardom, and you're gonna take over. I just got cut by the Warriors, and I got cut by the Rockets. I'm fighting for my life. Don't come saying this nonsense. We want a team. All right, Phil, you run it.
Yeah. And then
Your uncle's like, I want a team too. All right, Phil, make it happen.
it's very close to that. It's not far from the truth. Yeah.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jeremy. Thank you so much for your support for the previous conversations. Today, we have a special opportunity to talk with Phil Chen, the CEO and one of the owners of the new Taipei Kings, which is a team that I play for. In addition to that, he does a whole lot of other stuff, but we'll get into it. So thank you, Phil, for being a part of this. Briefly introduce yourself to all the listeners.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't know, but I actually grew up in Texas. I actually spent my baby years between Texas and Puerto Rico. My parents managed factories there, and I only moved back to Taiwan for grade school.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I did all my grade school stuff in Taiwan, and then I did all my college and undergrad in the States. I actually started out in community college in the Bay Area, a place called Skyline. I don't know if you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've played a lot of games there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I played basketball there at Skyline.
Ah,
Yeah.
wow.
And
Right
then,
off of 280.
Yeah, that's right. And then I only had found out this during the summer because Phil Handy was training our players, and he played at Skyline.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, he played on the 92 team, and I was on the 96 team.
Okay.
Yeah. And the way that happened was one of my teammates at my high school team, his father was the head coach of a team in Taiwan. It was a really short stint. I actually played there only for, the first semester. Then I actually dropped out. It was too much. And then I went to De Anza College, which is another college in Cupertino, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Our family is a well-to-do family, but the company culture in which my parents grew up was very frugal. I was just telling my kids the other day that my first Nike shoe was the Air Max, the red ones. And I think my brother got it in Hong Kong in 1990. It was the first Nike shoe I ever had. And then the first Jordan shoes I ever had was because it was sponsored by Nike for my high school basketball team.
Oh, nice.
And it was the Air Jordan. It was the 8, the one with the crisscross
Yeah.
kind of strap.
Yeah.
And so I never had sneakers. And then because my kids were asking, why do I need so many sneakers?
Oh,
Yeah. And I was telling them, I think because when I was young, it was such a coveted thing. We weren't allowed to spend that type of money on that type of material things. And then I guess when I grew up, it became sort of a subconscious thing that I wanted.
yeah. I totally feel you on that because growing up, we never could get drinks at restaurants. We never could get drinks. So now, every time I go out to a restaurant, I always get a drink.
Do you remember your first Nike shoe or basketball shoe?
Honestly, I don't remember it, but very similar. Like we would have to wear our shoes until there were holes, until our sock was like hitting the ground. And like when it rained, our socks would get wet. Of course, it comes with a caveat. It's like, okay, when it rains, your socks get wet, but you still need to get, whether it's straight A's or you need to win this spelling bee or you need to, whatever it is, or you have to wait for your birthday, there was always something attached to it. And so I can remember like Sean Kemp's shoes or when I got the Nike Shocks or like, those are like, some of those are very core memories of when I finally was able to get a pair of shoes that I had really wanted for a year or two. Now it's like you do everything, right? You're an ordained pastor, businessman, you mentor a lot of entrepreneurs. You are CEO and one of the owners of a professional basketball team. And there's other stuff in there that I don't know about. But it seems like you have your hand in everything and you have expertise and knowledge into like so many different areas, industries, sectors.
Yeah, I guess I've been really lucky to have that opportunity. I think being in kind of my family background, a well-to-do, and in a kind of, I guess in a bad way, I was the first in that type of background to be in a community college. And for Asians, that was shameful. But that, I keep telling my kids, that experience was the best experience I could have had for somebody in my background to go to a community college where every person I met there, they all had jobs, side jobs, right? They couldn't pay for their textbooks, right? And it really exposed me to a world in which kind of expanded my world and understanding.
Yeah.
And I think that type of the people that I met there, the questions that I asked, really it allowed me to kind of not become the typical kind of path
Yeah.
that I would have gone. And so I went on to become, a scientist, a physicist, and from there I got deeper into the philosophy and the theology, and then became a pastor, and from there became an entrepreneur, and then from that became more into venture investing and innovation. The most formative years for me was that leap from Taiwan and going to the States, being by myself and learning and being exposed to that kind of very diverse set of people in the Bay Area.
You have been exposed to so many different viewpoints, perspectives, cultures, and now it seems like as you run this organization, I did want to touch it really quickly on how did we meet? Because I think it was a miracle.
Yeah, it was probably 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was on a business trip to New York. I was at HTC. That was the year where we started investing. That was actually the year we acquired Beats, the headset company.
Oh, okay.
Beats by Dre.
Yeah.
And we were in New York during that trip. We had, by message, a mutual friend of ours named Jason Ma. And yeah, we just met up casually. And then he said, "Oh, my buddy Jeremy is here as well." And so the first time we met was actually we did dinner first at one of the Chinese restaurants in near Times Square in Wuliangyi. I don't know if you remember that.
I
Like
don't
the
remember.
spicy,
I don't remember that part.
Sichuan food. The other connection we had was I had hosted Alan Houston before
Oh,
in Taiwan. He was interested in doing a shoe.
gotcha.
And he was an assistant GM
Yeah.
when you were there.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
we got to talking about you. And so I actually went to the game with him. And then Jason was with your parents.
Yeah.
I think it was a player's locker room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I first met your parents. That's also the first time I met Blackie and Fun Fun.
Yeah. We all kind of ended up meeting on that trip.
Yeah, this was your first Madison Square Garden game.
Yeah.
And I still remember it was, you came in maybe the last 4 or 5 minutes. It was really like, garbage time. But I just remember as, an Asian American, like how electric Madison Square Garden became whenever you stepped on the floor. I remember, asking Alan, is it usual to have a bench player come off the bench and have this type of energy and electricity? And he says, no, he's never seen it either before. And you could just tell that there was this huge demand and energy of people cheering for you. And you had something like 5 points, 4 assists. It was an amazing stats, but it was just amazing for me to witness this Asian American like really being put on the scene, and people were excited for you.
Yeah.
And then after the game, when we had that prayer, and it's funny, Blackie actually documented that prayer. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna be, what you became to be." And I also remember after that we all left, and I went to grab a drink with Jason, and I was being real with him. I told him like for Jeremy to be a superstar as an Asian, like I don't think it's possible,
Yeah.
But surely enough, 2 games later, it happened. I actually have another crazy story behind this because I was in New York and I invited another of my cousin to the game, and she's like, I'm like, yeah, you should come watch Jeremy Lin. Like Jeremy Lynn for me was a big deal because you were Asian American. I'm an NBA basketball fan. She wasn't a basketball fan. She's like, long story short, she said no. Like, I don't know who Jeremy is. And then 2 games later, obviously she knew your name, and it was really funny. It was a very big moment for me to see kind of the rise of Asians, and then because of that, I actually made more after that, made more investments in Asian entrepreneurs, you know, including our mutual friend in Jubilee, Jason, his company, and then a company that Jason started called 88 Rising. And I was able to kind of be a part and have witnessed kind of, Asian Americans making their mark.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember because we were on the steps outside. We were on the steps of MSG. We're praying. And Jason just stops the prayer and he's like, within a month, you're going to be the starter and you're going to like rise to stardom and you're going to take over. And I'm just sitting there in my mind like, I just got cut by the Warriors and I got cut by the Rockets. Like, I'm fighting for my life. Like, don't come saying this nonsense. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Even
myself,
you, right?
I'm like, this is not,
Even you.
this is not, and good thing Blackie recorded it. Good thing it's recorded. Then Linsanity actually happened. That's how Phil and I first met. And now you fast forward about 12 years. We're here now. I'm playing for your organization. And a lot of people, especially in the Taiwan basketball circle or Asia basketball circle, they know that you're affiliated with the new Taipei Kings, which has had pretty unprecedented success in the first 3 years of an organization. But many people didn't know that you didn't actually want to own a basketball team. So I just kind of want to understand, like, what was your philosophy, what was your mindset, and how did you end up with the Taipei Kings?
Well, it all started, when COVID hit, right? Our family, we had moved back from Hong Kong to Taiwan. And I was still very active as a venture investor. Most of our investments were in California and Israel, London, Finland, things of that, those places. It was all in tech. And in Taiwan, I was looking to invest too. It was fascinating because, basketball had, as I was learning it, it had its ups and downs. It was definitely in the downside when we invested. When Blackie had wanted to start Plusly, it was one of those things where I saw this entrepreneur where, like, this guy has invested 20 years of his life in basketball in Taiwan. I didn't see that he'd give up. But at the same time, there was zero interest. There were no other investors in this space. The only people that invested in this league was, of course, Blackie himself, the 4 teams who put up some cash, but then the bulk of it came between Blackie and myself and a group of Silicon Valley investors who are used to taking that type of risk. And also, we are investing in a sporting event where COVID had hit.
Yeah.
And so sporting events was not supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
But then Taiwan luckily became, one of the safest places. And so basketball was still able to go ahead. And so the first year, we were shocked. It went from an average, so SBL had maybe 200 people in the audience. And then the first year you saw the Lioneers and the Braves and the Dreamers, they all averaged 4,000. And so it was like 15, 20x increase in attendance. To this day, I don't know that I know why. It happened. It was a one-time phenomenon. And then second year came, and I actually was really interested. There was, of course, rumors of another league starting, and I tried to broker conversations between teams there to just join in. But then during that same time, a lot of my cousins came back to Taiwan. They had heard about this league, and they were just asking me, my family was asking me what it took to start a team.
Yeah.
And I was just simply explaining to them what it takes, how many people, how much cash, and how many players. And it was really the younger cousins of mine that got really excited. My uncle was the first to say, hey, why don't we do our own team? That was the first time I took it seriously, where like, hey, yeah, I think we could probably do this. And I think we could tell a very different story and do it in a very different way. And that's how it started.
You were like, okay, I took it seriously, and that was an opportunity for me to do things differently. I mean, there's a lot behind that word different. Like there was so much thought and intentionality. I was wondering if you'd be willing to share, specifically what that look like.
Taiwan culture is a very top-down culture, right? The one thing we really wanted to do was create a very as flat as possible culture in which anybody can speak up, and building this team culture, just on the basketball court and off the basketball court. I remember when you signed, and I think you texted me something like, you probably never spent this much time with a player trying to convince them to join this team. And I thought about it, I'm like, there's actually one player that I spend more time with.
Because we had, I mean, 20 meetings through the summer,
Yeah.
20 meetings, and some of them were long and
Yes.
very direct.
Yes, very
talking about very tough conversation. And so that's why I was like, there's no way you spent this much time trying to recruit a player ever. But I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, but that player was Quincy Davis, right? I think we all approached him very differently because having been a venture investor in Silicon Valley, that a lot of times money and capital is the commodity.
Yeah.
The thing that's precious and rare and scarce is the talent. A lot of the bosses in Taiwan don't think that. The thinking and the behavior in Taiwan is capital is king, and then the talent, works under this capital. And so I think I approached it in a way where, I understand Quincy was the talent. And I know other teams gave him, there were rumors that they gave him blank checks. He can put in any number he wanted. But I think he really appreciated the open, frank, candid conversations that we had. And he decided to join us, right? And so I think the way we talked to players, the way we negotiated with players, the way we persuaded players to join was very different. We're the only team in all of Asia, from what I know, even Japan and Korea, we played in EASL, right? All the teams had a corporate name in their team. And it's actually quite funny. You have to be kind of a foreigner to come to Taiwan to see that as weird.
Yeah.
Because it's like calling them Crypto.com Lakers or the Rakuten Warriors.
Yeah.
That would be so strange.
Yeah.
But in Asia, it's not strange.
Every team does that.
That's right. Every team does that. But if you think about, wearing the name of a bank on a shirt or on a jersey, I think it becomes very limiting and difficult to try to represent the identity of a city that way, right? Because your company, your corporate culture already has a definition. If you're trying to represent the spirit of a city, and that's what I learned growing up watching the NBA, when like the Boston Celtics, represented like kind of hard work, like blue collar worker, versus LA, Hollywood, Magic Johnson, showman, entertainment, right? We tried to start by that culture, I don't think we've succeeded. We're attempting to try to define an identity around New Taipei with no corporate title sponsor. Every decision you make, from sponsorship to marketing, is different once you decide that.
Yeah. Even amidst my free agency process, I definitely got other offers where, financially, salary wise, like they're very far off from the offer that I got from the Kings, and meaning the Kings offer was much lower. And I think you talked about very openly in that like, yes, we don't have a huge bank. We're doing this for the city of New Taipei. We don't have a corporate sponsor the same way. Otherwise, we won't be able to represent the city the way we want to represent them. And the realistic part about it is we're a newer franchise, but these are some of the other things, and these are some of the other positives. And so, through a lot of difficult conversations, and and I'm not even gonna get into the details of some of the other stuff, but definitely openness, communication. I definitely felt that it wasn't going to be a top-down type thing. I even remember when I spoke to you during the free agent process, like, if I end up playing for you and you stopped me right there in the middle of like what I was saying, this is a free agency pitch. You stopped me right there and you're like, time out. Like, if you do join the team, I don't see you as playing for me. Like, that already inherently establishes a power dynamic that I'm actually not trying to instill, even though, technically on paper I do play for you. And you do pay my salary, but immediately from the very beginning, you were like, look, I want this to be something where every single player, every single staff person, like everybody who's part of this organization is very dignified and they can bring their thoughts, their challenges, their objections, their suggestions. Like, we want to hear, we want to have an open culture. And we're willing to be good listeners as an organization.
Yeah, that is a huge difference because it's about the new Taipei Kings. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's not about the CEO. It's not even about the ownership or the family.
Yeah.
Right. It really is our attempt to serve this community, an attempt to build an identity around this community through sports.
Yeah.
A lot of, I guess, attention is around, signing Jeremy Lin, right? And what that meant. I remember when we signed you, like everybody's congratulations was about that. Congratulations, you signing Jeremy Lin. But for me, it was just, it wasn't anything about that. I also kept trying to instill and tell you, and I still believe that, is like, how do I serve your purpose, right? Because you are a much bigger brand than New Taipei Kings. And obviously from a belief, we share the same belief in the value system. Like, how do I be of service for that vision? That is the bigger vision that at the end of the day, I want to serve.
Yeah.
That's what you want to serve too.
Yeah.
We were able to, I think, get our egos out of the way more, and then about the team, but even more importantly, the fundamental values and our belief system that we want to instill.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a lot of details, right? Like, my signing was a big deal, and normally the thing, what most other teams might do is they might market it in a way where it's, it's me front and center, and then, there's a bunch of smaller players around me, like, I'm blown up, but you guys have been so intentional, which I really appreciate, of like, yes, I am going to be front and center in a lot of the marketing and the posters and stuff, but there are other people that are blown up just as big, and there's tons of us in a lot of the different posters and things, and it's not like this is Jeremy's team and his little like crew of whatever followers and helpers, like, because that's not how basketball is played. That's not what you believed in, and that's not why I came here, is to be elevated like that, or to be marketed like that. And you've really, like, even through the process, like, yes, you were like, how do I make Jeremy feel welcome to the New Taipei Kings? But you're also thinking very intentionally about, like, how does this affect every one of our teammates now? How do I make sure that they're okay, that we have the tough but honest conversations with everybody else that will be impacted by me joining this team?
Yeah, and I want to say we've been criticized of that, because when you were in the Steelers, it was very much Jeremy the savior of this team. Obviously you're the bottom of the league. We didn't throw that same savior, hero, redeemer role onto you, although we knew that was a marketing tactic that would have worked, and we could have thrown a story around that. Even look at what we've achieved in East Asia Super League, right?
Yeah.
What you've done in push Taiwan. It's never been in this position. We've never beat champions in Korea or Japan or the Philippines, and this is the first time. But we've never kind of used you in a way where where you felt we're taking advantage of you, right?
Yeah.
It's always like, hey, how do we do this in a more respectful team way?
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've been criticized for not pushing you as much. We're happy to take kind of the trade-offs in that process.
That's why I love team sports, right? And you guys have done a great job of just humanizing and dignifying all of the players of the New Taipei Kings, and that requires a lot of work. And you're literally giving up, potentially you're giving up marketing, exposure, and revenue by doing it a different way, but you're doing it in a way that is keeping the core and the DNA of this team together. You touched on East Asia Super League, and, as we're both Christians and believers, we talked a lot about East Asia Super League, which is a league that takes the champions from the Taiwan Basketball League, Korean Basketball League, Japan's Basketball League, and the Philippines. So they take the top 2 teams from each of these 4 leagues, and we're in a Champions League. What was kind of your vision for this organization?
Yeah, when I was asked to run the team, one of my reluctance was because I've never done anything that's purely local in Taiwan. Like everything I've done, when I was at HTC, we sold phones globally, right? Over 100 countries. All my venture investments were, like I said, California, Israel, London, Finland, Berlin. It was always very international. And so I wasn't very sure if I could do it. The natural thing was, hey, if I'm going to invest in this league, our goal should be in 3 years, we need to go outside of Taiwan. Taiwan is a small island and a small place with limited basketball fans, and we needed to, go outside and connect to Korea, Japan, all of the Southeast Asia countries, right? This is the 3rd year for the new Taipei Kings. And so when we had that opportunity to engage in this EASL, it was what we set out to do. It's so fun to finally see, Taiwan basketball have that exchange on a professional level with Korea and Japan.
This year already in EASL, we have beaten last year's Korean championship team, last year's championship team from Japan. And we swept both games against the Philippines. And we did lose to Korea and Japan as well. And so we split, right? But the chance to be able to compete and to be able to do that, your dream, your vision is coming to fruition.
We might be the first team that we had coverage on CNN. We had coverage on Forbes, right? Which is actually the media outlets I'm more used to, having done stuff on the international stage. But it was a huge milestone for us. For me too. We're Taiwan basketball. We still have a lot of improvements to make, but we're on the international stage, right?
I mean, even when we won in the Philippines, ESPN Philippines, it's the top cover story is us.
That's right.
It happened really fast.
Yeah.
I kind of want to switch topics a little bit. This is something we've talked about privately, but you have a lot of very interesting and what I believe and agree with, a lot of different thoughts around culture. When it comes to players in Taiwan, whether it's training, mindset, things like that. You consistently send me videos, Instagram reels, or different things, or even podcasts or whatever, all around like mindset, confidence, or how to step out and be yourself as a player and different things like that. You're trying to build a culture. You're trying to build a team. You're trying to build an environment. What are some of the challenges that you've kind of seen, and what are some of the things that you're trying to do things differently and to disrupt status quo?
I'll share a story in which I met with 教育部长 before. This was maybe 10 years ago, and we were doing some education project, right? And he told me a story in which he went to Stanford Business School, right? And when he went to Stanford, it was a business class. And then, the professor gave them a task, some project to do. And it was a group of maybe 4 or 5 people per group. And so naturally, all the Taiwanese kids, got into one group. And then the other teams that, which were more diverse. And then the way the projects happen, he says, in every other group you could tell, like, you do this part. Let's break this problem into 5 parts. You do 1, you do 2, you do 3, you do 4 or 5. And let's get back 2 days later and let's discuss our progress. In his group, which is very typical Taiwan, he said the way they divided it was like, hey, this communication between us is such a hassle. It's such a, it's very difficult, and we got to work through, how we're going to communicate, what time. How about let's do this? This time, I'll do the whole thing. Okay, and then when we do this again, you do it the next. You got me next, right? Which completely destroys the whole purpose of this project, right?
Yeah.
But it's very typical of Taiwan. And I remember I had this moment of shock. Well, there was one time I was on the basketball court, And I did not know if I was in a company meeting room or on the basketball court. And it was the moment where I think it was, Ryan explaining a new play.
Ryan is our head coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we were on the court. This is when I would be more involved in the basketball side of things. And he explained it. And at the end, he said, it wasn't very clear. It was clear it wasn't very. And he says, any questions? Nobody asked questions. And then Ryan starts, okay. And he starts walking this towards this. And then you can see everybody starts chatting. What do you say? What do you mean here? Like, oh, this is not right, whatever. And it was exactly, it reminded me of moments in which I would be in a meeting room and the boss and the laoban would say, hey, this is our plan, this is our strategy, this is our whatever marketing. Any questions, any comments, any problems, whatever, right? You walked out and problem starts surfacing, right?
Yeah.
In any successful startup, right? That never happens
Yeah.
because we need to be very candid and frank about our problems or else we're not going to survive.
Yeah.
That was a huge challenge. Like, how do you get people to speak and talk? That was a culture. I mean, to this day, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Taiwan culture, they grew up that way, right? They grew up being told, hey, you do 1, 2, 3, 4. They don't ask you what is 1, 2, 3, 4, and what 1 or what 2 do you do and I do.
Or do you
Right.
even agree with 1, 2, 3?
That's
4,
right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. How to get players to open up and have very candid, frank conversations. That's been quite challenging.
Yeah.
And we may be criticized for, not doing the top down. They expect you to no. You're supposed to give direction. You're supposed to tell us what 1, 2, 3, 4 is.
Yeah.
It also, for me, that if I do that, then it defeats the whole team.
Yeah.
That culture we're trying to build.
It's a beautiful part because we're fighting for it, right? Like, each player, what they're struggling with, their family situation, what their significant other or their spouse is struggling. Like, you're so heavily invested in your players, even the psyche of certain players, who is feeling confident right now, who is not feeling confident. Like, you're so invested into seeing them grow and seeing them succeed, and you really want to hear their thoughts. You want them to give their objections. And at the end of the day, and like just like on any team, there will have to be a hierarchy. There will have to be a final say. There will have to be some times where when people disagree, someone has to pull rank and make a decision everyone else has followed. These are all realistic parts of being on a team. But the one thing that you really don't want the Kings to be is one person comes in, says something, everyone else or whoever disagrees has no voice, has no autonomy. If we were to operate like that, we would struggle as basketball players, which is why a lot of Eastern Asian basketball players, when they get to the US, they struggle because mentally it's like, I've been told what to do. I've been boxed in my whole life, and I'm just supposed to accept this as this is what it is. And what you're trying to get these players to see is here, it does not have to be like that. If you believe you can do something, like, yes, you're going to have to prove it. You're going to work at it. But by all means, like, try to create a path for yourself. Try to do things, that you feel like you can actually do or voice your opinion. And that, to me, I mean, I wish I could go into all the different stories, but it's been amazing to see how you have really backed up what you had said to me in the summer.
So Taiwan is the one thing it does world class is number one in the world is semiconductor manufacturing. That is run down as a science. I think running a basketball team to me is very much like, or at least I approach it very much like running a startup. And it is a creative process, I think I've learned so much from you too, the way you talk, how you talk about basketball. Basketball, it's an art, right? There's a lot of things that the way Taiwan has chosen to teach basketball as if you move this way, you move that. It's like it's a science. It's an engineering problem rather than, no, it's a very human process. It can be very, very creative. It's very difficult for it to be top down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's something we're continuing to work on, and I think you're the champion of that.
It's almost like mathematics, like 2 + 2 = 4 every time. Once you pass it here, you must run there. Once you set the screen, you must do this. But there's no reaction, there's no flow, there's no artistry to being robotic or playing robotic or thinking robotic. And the best teams are the ones where, yes, they have their DNA, but they can adapt to whatever the opposing team is doing or whatever needs to happen if a player goes down or whatever circumstance is going on. And I think that's what's important. Even for me as a player, it's like we have players 1 through 20. Maybe players 1 through 10 are playing and they're playing in a game. But really there are times in the game where at halftime or whatever, when we're down, the person that we really needed to listen to is anybody besides 1 through 10. We need to listen through 11 through 20 because 1 through 10 is we're too
Rigid,
in the game,
yes.
right? We're so immersed in the game, and you need people to step back and give a bird's eye perspective of, hey, they're doing this. Have we thought about doing this? Have we thought about making that change? But like now you have to create the environment where players 11 through 20 are willing to say that and know that when they say that, we will take that as valuable as if player 1 said that, right?
I just watched, it was Brian Shaw talking about Phil Jackson managed Kobe. And Brian Shaw was saying how in the first few years, Phil Jackson would always yell at Shaq, but he would never yell at Kobe. And Kobe had free reign to shoot and attack. He asked Phil Jackson why he did that. Is like, and the way he said it was because Kobe is the attacker in our team, but I want to let him explore his free range of his offensive abilities. We can put the discipline and restrictions later. I think a big problem in Taiwan is they put that restriction and discipline way too early. By 6th grade, he knows if he's a point guard or a shooting guard or a center, and this is his role, right? When no, at that age, you need to be exploring who you are.
Yeah.
Who you are on the basketball court and off the court doesn't really settle in, like even into your 30s.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
But then I think a lot of the education in Taiwan is like, we want to tell them this is who you are by when they're 10 years old and 11 and 12, right?
Yeah.
This is where we roll. And then now when you're on a professional team, no, you got to do this. They don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I've always been doing 1, 2, 3. Now you're telling me to do 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Or just 3. They freeze.
For sure. I've been on teams or played with players where they catch the ball. I have an amazing scoring opportunity to the weak side. They don't even look. They don't look to shoot. They don't look to pass. They don't look to drive. They turn right back to me and is waiting for me, trying to get me the ball back when 2 people just finished double teaming me. And it's like, that's obviously a very extreme example, but within the realm of basketball, there's so many nuances to like giving everybody in basketball is organized chaos, right? Like you have to have some structure, you have to have some organization, you have to have some guiding principles, but amidst those principles, there's a lot of creativity and different cavities that you can explore. And to be fully functional and reaching your potential as a team, like you need players to do that, be willing to do that and buy into that. And honestly, I've never met a player who doesn't want to do that. In Asia, I've met a lot of players who don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And that is your challenge that you're trying to build and approach. One another great example is, I've never seen this done before. I've played 14 years of professional basketball. I've never seen this done before. Chinese New Year just passed, and you and the general manager schedule meetings with every single player to have a mid-season review, to give them a complete green light, blank slate, to share anything that is on their mind, and to also break down their first half and to give them goals for the second half. And you guys don't even talk about it only from basketball, like production, stats, whatever. You talk about it from communication, leadership, even personal development. What can you be growing as a person? And I know because I'm hearing what is happening in some of these conversations, and even one of the challenges that you've given Joe has nothing to do with how many points he scores or any of that other stuff, or what is his plus minus or his efficiency. It's about becoming a better leader. It's about becoming a better person. There's a lot of really good stuff happening in this organization. A lot of good values, and I think that's why I wanted to have this conversation. So
And one of the things with Joe is like, and this is the problem with me and James too. Like we're more Asian American, right? And so by definition, we're not going to be as liked in local Taiwan. And I fully accept that. And we get criticized. We're so American, we're doing the Western style. And I fully accept that. And I understand. But at the same time, one of the things I would say to Joe is like, so you have to work that much harder to get the media to like you too, because they don't connect with you as much. Sometimes it doesn't matter how great you are on the basketball court. If you can't communicate it, if they don't identify with you as a person, as a human being, and he thinks that these awards are objective. Like I have better numbers than this guy. Why shouldn't I have got this as that? But it's all emotional. Like the fan votes are emotional. The media votes are also emotional. We are emotional social beings. And we need to understand that we're not local. And so there's going to be conflict. There's going to be miscommunication. And that requires a lot more effort on our part, me included, of how do we connect more with local players, local culture, local media, right? As much as, this gap exists between, I am a native English speaker, right? And so I think people appreciate how much you've come along in all your interviews doing everything in Chinese, right? That goes a long way, right? Whether it's you, me, Joe, or James even, right? We need to make up that gap.
Yeah, no, and I think this season, one of the big themes for the new Taipei Kings has been how do we elevate the voice of the local players, right? And last year you guys were number one team in the regular season, and you finished second in the overall playoffs. So a very successful team, but even then, you already have import of the year in Byron Mullins. You have Kenny Manigault, who very well could be import of the year this year. So you have some amazing imports along with the other imports that we have here. But at the same time, how do we elevate the voice of the locals so that they're not just like, okay, well, this team is all about the imports and we're just whatever, like forget us, right? And so you guys have done creative things. You've added people to coaching staff. You've added strategically put in other people where the voice of the locals can be heard more, can be listened to more. Even if the production's points-wise or stats-wise, maybe that doesn't have to change or whatever, because that all depends on how players mesh together and what Coach Ryan wants and everything. But it's more the intentionality of, like, we're trying to build a true team here.
Yeah, and we're the first to, and this is I'm pretty proud of supporting Xiao Li and doing his podcast. And his podcast is, I think, the most popular basketball podcast in Taiwan, right? And it's him as a local player always having a local guest, talk about, tell their story, right? And obviously this year, Jet and Joe started doing that. But we're also the team that has the most players having their own podcasts, speaking their voice.
Yeah.
I mean, that was part of the goal too, is to how do we get players to speak their mind, right? Media can have their say, fans can have their say. But the players, you have your say.
So you guys heard it. If you want to join the Kings, you have to have a podcast. All right. You don't have a podcast, don't think about joining the Kings. The last question, you are an ordained pastor, and your faith journey has been really amazing. You're actually, I've asked Phil to spiritually disciple me because there's so many things I want to learn from a faith standpoint. But one of the things that you and a few other people on staff do, or that that I know that you guys do, is you guys have a prayer team, and you guys actively weekly pray and talk and meet about how can we really love and serve the people. And when I say the people in this organization, I'm not just talking about players. I'm talking about anybody, staff. Doesn't matter how high or low you are on on the hierarchy. Like you guys take the time, you meet, you pray, you talk through things, you say, what can we do for this person? Oh, this is a life event, or they just went through something tragic or whatever. What can we do as an organization? I mean, I have many, many stories of how you and your family have helped me, how you guys have, how many times have you included and generously asked our team to come to, for Mongolian barbecue, for swim parties, for this, for that? How many times have you sent gifts and whatnot? Like when my wife got sick, like you took care of us, you sent medicine, you sent, chicken soup and other things like that. Like you're doing this for so many players, and you're praying for them, and you're really trying to love them radically. Can you talk about your motivation for that and how your faith has really like trickled and manifested itself into the DNA of the Kings?
Spend so much time by ourselves and speaking and talking to ourselves. And we also, of course, as manager, and you even as a player, if you're trying to solve a problem on the court, of course, communication, right? Even my one-on-ones with players, right? It's once every 2 months, or 3 months. There's so many things that happen on a day-to-day basis that there's no way we can cover it, right? As believers and as people of faith, we do believe in a God that helps you manage those conversations, right? And whatever hurt or pain or challenges or risks or even good or bad that one experiences, we do believe that prayer can make these changes in other people. And so if we can be intentional about putting somebody's issues on the table as a group and pray about it, it's often more effective than speaking, in a very explicit manner. Right? We believe that there is a God that will listen to these voices, your inner voices. And if other people are asking in your, and as an advocate, right? And so, I just see myself as an advocate for whatever endeavor. I know James, who just had a baby, right? I'm a huge advocate of sending him whatever parenting tips on those things. At the end of the day, we want this basketball team to flourish, but I want each individual staff and player to flourish. And flourish doesn't mean just performing on the basketball court, but it's also meaning how to be a dad, how to be a great dad, how to be, a good friend in somebody else's needs, right? I think it's that holistic flourishing that we're trying to pursue. It is bigger than basketball for sure.
I mean, I think the word that comes to mind is servant leadership, right? Like a lot of owners, a lot of CEOs, it's what can you do for me? What can you do for this organization? What can you do for this team? What can you do for a win-loss record? What contribution are you bringing to me or my end goal? Like, I see you as a means to an end, versus for you in servant leadership, it's very much like, yes, we would love to win a championship. Yes, you have a job to do. You have responsibilities, and we have expectations of you. But also, like, how can you or your family or this organization serve the player or staff that you're a better person when you leave than when you got here? That's, to me, pretty groundbreaking, pretty radical. I mean, I don't see that in a lot of organizations. I want to thank you for your time. It was a very fruitful conversation. It ended up going a lot longer than I had expected. But I really appreciate your time, your generosity, and make sure you all listen in and let me know who you want me to chat to for the next podcast. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for having me.